We have got a really fun game headlining the Week 15 NFL DFS main slate. That is the Bills and Lions. Frankly, not sure how this is not like an island game that we don't get to talk about for DFS, but luckily for us, it is because it is easily the highest total of the week. It has a tight spread as well. We're going to break down our thoughts on that game from a game stacking perspective. We'll talk about other games we could consider stacking because it's a bit murky beyond that, top value plays of the week, and more to get you ready for the NFL DFS Week 15 main slate. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I'm a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula. You can find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, Week 15 is coming in hot. We get to go right back to Josh Allen. He was oh so kind to us last week. How you doing today?
Yeah, definitely want to get back there. That mistake eraser potential that we always talk about. Look, Sam Darnold kind of felt like, look, if you don't have Sam Darnold, you're toast. And then Josh Allen went out and did what Josh Allen can do, and that's awesome. But yeah, it was a nice week for us, especially you, where you had a nice week, but also clinched our bobble hat. Kind of dusted me early, which felt bad. But you've been having a nice year. You've been 2 steps ahead of me in our head-to-head. Sometimes I'm like, I see the lineups, I'm like, that made more sense than what I did. So you deserve it. Very well deserved. And I'm looking forward to whatever request you make.
Not a lot you can do when the head-to-head scores 243. Like, that's kind of, I've never seen a number like that. I don't think I ever will again. But it's set up perfectly where you had big gains from studs and you had obvious value plays who made a lot of sense. And I don't think this slate is quite in that bucket because we don't have a Garendo, we don't have a Charbonnet 53, but we do have some, I think, value plays who make sense. I'm not having to sell myself on them necessarily. They have paths to failure for sure, but I do think they make a lot of sense. We're going to break down who those value plays are. We'll lay out how to stack that Bills-Lions game and much more to get you ready for Week 15 here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, and search for FanDuel Research Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. While you're there, hit up the subscribe button, and then also leave a 5-star rating and review if you like what you hear. Of course, these shows also streamed live on our brand new YouTube page alongside covering the spread later today, talking to Megan Payton about her best bets across NFL Week 15, including her thoughts on Bills and Lions. Tomorrow, Andy Nader will join me at 10 a.m. Eastern to break down her thoughts on the top player props for NFL Week 15. Also had Dr. Ed Feng of the Power Rank on to break down his thoughts on the college football playoff bracket if you're in some pools for that. All those shows on the YouTube page. Subscribe there, leave us a thumbs up, and turn on notifications to get notified as we go live Monday through Friday. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chattanooga, Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Health Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look here at this Week 15 slate, beginning with our slate overview for this week. And Brandon, I think it does come down to that Bills-Lions game, how you want to stack that one up, because it's very clearly the top game on the slate for stacking, easily the highest total on the slate, tight spread as well. So it comes down to, for me, how do you stack that game, and where do you find value? What to you stands out as being the keys for this week 15 main slate?
Yeah, I mean, figuring out how to stack that one or potentially not, right? Like this is a very obvious game. If you're playing in tournaments, you might want to say, what if that game's not very good? Now, the paths to that, they exist. They don't seem very likely based on how these teams play. But outside of that, I think it's like when I was doing my salary scroll, I liked a lot of plays. I loved a few. I liked a lot. I got to figure out how to approach this because, as usual, the Lions don't come at low salaries, and there's a couple that you can kind of justify. Maybe it's been a while since we've seen a big game from, I don't know if he's your guy anymore, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like he came out and got what?
When was he my guy?
You warmed up to him a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
last year, we're talking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just wanted to track the timeline here.
Okay.
So I've not used him at all this year outside of Thanksgiving, I don't think.
So you hate Amon-Ra. It's been a while since he's had a big game. Got peppered early last week, and then just they're like, hey, we're good, I guess. I think that's appealing. This is the type of game environment where there's a lot of passing volume, a lot of efficiency, a lot of touchdown potential, where Amon-Ra has that in his bag. And it's a matter of like, okay, is this Amon-Ra week? You got to ask those questions. So you're not going to get a lot of salary reprieve in that game, but there's also, like you already said, not a ton of pure traditional value. Like the 7,000 range at running back is pretty loaded.
It's a rock star for this week, yeah.
But is that enough to sort of say Josh Allen plus, I'll say Amon-Ra, but you might not. Like
I would probably put Gibbs as the primo piece in that game for me.
So like his salary is 8,000. That takes one of the 7K running backs off the board in that lineup, And I love Jahmyr Gibbs as much as the next guy. His role is not flawless. He's a committee back who's very, very good, and his offense is great. Do you want to make him a core play? Do you have any reservations about Jahmyr Gibbs? Those are the questions you have to ask.
Yep.
So, yes, figuring out how to stack that game. But I think the bigger picture is like, what else do you do? What do you do to get to that game?
Right.
Because you're going to have to kind of, and again, there are value ways to get there. I get that.
Yeah.
But that's not really how you want to, you still want like the Gibbs. Do you want James Cook and his always 50% snap? But like, you're going to have to tell me, this is a week you're going to have to tell me not to be interested in James Cook, basically.
I am going to tell you not to be interested in James Cook. Or at least I'll tell myself. I don't know what I'll tell you, but for myself,
I'm already not that interested, but
okay, cool. Yeah. He tends to be more my guy. And if I'm out, I think that says something for sure. Let's talk about the injuries impacting this week 15 main slate. The big one, obviously, is that Kenneth Walker III missed practice again Wednesday due to his calf injury. Mike McDonald said that Walker does not need to practice in order to play, but seems genuinely questionable. So, I mean, if Walker does play, I feel like we can toss him out because hasn't been that amazing anyway, and Charbonnet has played well enough. But if Walker can't go again, how much Zach Charbonnet is too much at $6,700?
The limit does not exist, if we're being honest.
The Lindsay Lohan gift. Let's go.
79% snap rate, 29 opportunities, 193 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 red zone carry. Like he basically just had, dare I say it, like a kind of Christian McCaffrey like sort of workload where he was getting targets, carries, red zone work. He's a good football player, and you can't really just assume this is the case because you see replacement backs who don't necessarily erupt, but if you look at that box score and that volume, it's been limited. And, other teams by now are getting dinged up. I think there's sometimes a late season sort of appeal for backs and players in general, but the easiest way to think about it is running backs who might not be feeling like it's week 15. I'm not saying that hasn't had a touch until, last week. That's not the case, but
kind of didn't.
He was a guy that we targeted earlier on at various times. And so for me, I don't know how you look at that and don't find it incredibly appealing. And Charbonnet without Walker, I'm not going to say definitively, but very likely my RB1.
I think he would almost be an every lineup kind of guy, right?
Yeah, but there are some other guys who I think are not that far off and not that much higher in salary.
In the games he's played without Walker, it's a 3-game sample, 123 yards and scrimmage per game, 59% red zone share. That's an absurd workload. So he would definitely be my RB1, and he'd be like 100% line of consideration for me. It's a tougher matchup this week against the Packers, but
yeah,
I still have just too much faith in that role that they've given him. They did mix in Kenny McIntosh a bit. I think George Halani might have played like a snap in that game, but it really was all about Charbonnet. He looked frankly better than I thought he would too, which doesn't hurt. So I
think he's good.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a great pass catcher. I was skeptical of the rushing, and then he was like, I got that too, man. Don't worry. So kudos to him. That was awesome. And it was really fun. And he'll be like the top guy in the slate for me if we get no Walker. George Pickens seems to be on the wrong side of questionable this week for the Steelers. Didn't practice Wednesday after missing week 14 due to a hamstring injury. If Pickens does sit, any Steelers you want in his place against the Eagles?
No, I don't like that game. I think that game's going to be pretty brutal for fantasy production. And last week without Pickens, nobody really had an elevated role. I don't really see it. So for me, I'm going to be out on the pass catchers pretty easily. And I don't know what you could do to convince me to play any receiver or tight end not named George Pickens in this offense. So
yeah, we got better value elsewhere, so I'm not going to chase it either, especially against such a good defense. Justin Herbert didn't practice Wednesday due to ankle and thigh injuries. It sounds like he'll play, but he's obviously not 100% again, which stinks because he's very fun when he's healthy. Ladd McConkey limited with his shoulder and knee injuries. Expect to be without Will Dissly due to a shoulder injury. So a lot of injuries here for the Chargers. Do the injuries to Herbert and McConkey decrease your willingness to go at Ladd if he plays, or Stone Smart as well? I know you thought this was a joke. It's actually not. I think that he's actually a play.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit of a bit with Stone Cold Smart here, but
Stone Smart. We're not making
because I'm going to do the Hunter Hurst Henry.
And I don't know what that means.
It's but anybody who grew up in the 90s should know that.
But there's actually a Hayden Hurst, and so if you add in Hunter Hurst Henry, it's very confusing to me. So like I can't have, and he's on Stone Smart's team. He's hurt, but like he's on his team, and it breaks my brain.
Yes, but Hunter Henry I think is a much better play at a similar salary. Now Smart, I'll let you explain, and then I'll kind of give my rebuttal just so that we're in check here a little bit. Cool. So sell me on Stone Smart.
I think that the key thing here is that when Dissly was out in the second half last week, Smart ran 11 routes, which was more than everybody except for, it was either Palmer or Johnston. It was second on the team in that time. So 11 routes, 3 targets, 54 yards, got some deep work there. He is athletic. He is more in the mold of a pass catching tight end than he is in the mold of a blocker. And if Justin Herbert can make Will Dissly relevant for DFS, he can make Stone Smart relevant at home against a defense missing its best secondary piece in Antoine Winfield Jr. So that's why I'd be willing to go there. It's a lot of snaps tied to a very efficient quarterback in a decent game indoors against a bad defense. I think that's a lot of boxes to check for $4,500.
I agree. The rebuttal for me is he could not outplay Will Dissly and was on special teams until Dissly was out. And so I want to keep things in check here.
Sure.
Injuries to the offense, efficiency concerns a little bit. Now the salary helps overcome that. The bigger potential rebuttal is there are a lot of nice tight ends on the board.
That's a fair point. I think the Hunter Henry one specifically is aggressively fair.
Yeah. And he's not the only one. We got some studs. So he's not off the list, but we said Charbonnet close to every lineup, maybe every lineup. This isn't like you just plug in Stone Smart, save salary because he's going to get 10 targets. I'm not convinced of that. Now he did get downfield work.
Yeah.
He made the most of those. So I have I want to see him succeed. He looks fun, but again, I think it's kind of an important one to make sure we're level setting a bit.
I think this is one of the spots again where we're on the same page. Given that I agree that Henry is the far better play. at $500 more, and Smart is a consideration, but not a lock by any means. So I think we're actually aligned here. Bucks did not have Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, or Sterling Shepard at practice on Wednesday. Irving's back tightened up on him during the game last week, which is why he left so early. I still think he has a shot to play this week. Evans still managing the hamstring injury, though he's played through it despite not practicing a ton recently. So the Bucks are banged up too, but they're in a game with a highish total, tight spread. What's your interest level in going at the Bucks offense overall this week?
Yeah, just a tough one for Bucky to leave so early, but that also gave us enough of a sample to see what they might do at this rate without Bucky. And Rachaad White had a 75% snap rate, 109 scrimmage yards on 20 total opportunities, 60% of the red zone work. I don't think it wasn't a ton of volume, but again, just to see him.
Yeah, it was 3 out of 5.
Yeah. That's nice to see. So White without Bucky, another name in that 7K range that stands out, which I like to see. And I don't have that many concerns if we know that this is kind of what we're going to get. So I like that. As far as the pass catchers go, unless you have thoughts on White here.
I think that he'd be a tremendous play if there's no Bucky for the reasons you listed. He didn't, like when he was the featured back earlier on this year, he didn't do very well, but it kind of seems like they unlocked something in the ground game. I know they had some injuries along the offensive line earlier this year, so maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was Liam Cohen finding his stride as a play caller, but like White as a rusher has been way more efficient recently. So I think that's important. He was getting, he's a great pass catcher. We know that. And you mentioned the goal line role. So he would have early down work, goal line work, passing game work. I think that he'd be a tremendous play if there were no Bucky. I'd prefer Charbonnet without Walker, but I would really like White a lot too.
Yeah, and then within this offense, which is fun, and if we like this game, it's appealing in a sense. Now, Mike Evans was out-targeted by Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard last week, but Evans led the receivers in yards with 69, but Cade Otton actually led the team at 70. So I think Otton's still interesting. As I want to be in on Jalen McMillan as soon as possible, but I'm not convinced. He did get some downfield work. He was kind of running open, which is what he was doing earlier in the year. And we were buying in. I was watching tape for once. I was like, oh no. And that did not work out. So I can't quite go full in on like McMillan. I'm not going to play Sterling Shepard. So I think you could get in and get out with stacks here.
Yep.
Rachaad White with Stone Smart, or if you want to say McMillan, but more realistically, it's like Mike Evans.
Yeah.
And Stone Smart. I think you kind of get in, get out here. So
and if Ladd is full by Friday,
games are valuable.
Yeah. If Ladd's full by Friday, I'll use him at 71. So I could use him too. It's a really good salary for a guy who they might just feature down the stretch. So I think that it's a zero quarterback game, but there are some guys who are fine as far as secondary plays there.
Yeah.
Breece Hall still struggling with his knee injury, making me think that he'll sit again this week. The Jets facing the Jags. Any interest in Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis if Hall were to be out once again?
Yeah. So we ended up getting, the 3 value backs last week with Guerendo, Charbonnet, and Braylon Allen, and you and I both were lowest on Allen. It's not like hindsight, analysis here, but Allen still was not truly a featured back. They got Isaiah Davis involved. Now, I would argue that Allen had the better overall role between the two, even if it doesn't quite look like he had an amazing role. The salary is up a decent amount, but not to the point where I wouldn't play him. So he'd be in the consideration set for me, especially in a matchup like this, but you'd want to see a little bit more and I'd feel more optimistic, but I think it's not that he's got a low floor, which he does, honestly, in this offense and even in this matchup. It's what's the ceiling if he is splitting time, and do I need to think about that, especially with someone like Charbonnet or honestly at 64, you're not that far from the 7K range where these guys might play 85% snap rates.
Right. Like, can Allen get me 20? And I have to hesitate to say yes or no on that. And that's kind of the issue that I have. Like, I don't think it's a 0% chance, but it's not amazing. So it would be more so like, man, we didn't get Charbonnet with no Ken. I can't talk myself in some of the value receivers. I'm really desperate. He'd be the first guy I'd turn to down here, but it'd be forcing it. And like, I'm fine with that at times because I want to get Josh Allen paired with, Jahmyr Gibbs and guys like that. But it'd really be just when I'm super desperate, which is not great feeling. So
I think there's too many names where you need to sort of force that.
Yep, I agree. Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid both practiced in full for the Bills on Wednesday, meaning they should be back for their key matchup with the Lions. We'll talk about them in the bookmakers section. Panthers rookie Jonathan Brooks, unfortunately, done for the year after re-tearing his ACL. That stinks. Bummer. Raheem Blackshear didn't practice Wednesday with his chest injury. So there's nobody left besides Chuba Hubbard. He played a 97% snap rate either this week or a couple weeks ago. So how are you viewing Chuba at 75 against the Cowboys?
Yeah, Chuba was at 97% of the snaps this past week. 26 carries, 5 targets, 8 red zone chances. This team believes in him, and it's really unfortunate. Like, he got a huge contract out of Jonathan Brooks being injured earlier, and now he's going to be leaned on. So I think he's a great play. I've liked him a good amount for most of the year. You have 2, and then things kind of tapered off a bit, but we've seen this, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, is we've seen it from him. It's not the best offense by any means, but this team is playing hard. That is very clear, and he is playing well. So if we don't get Charbonnet, Chuba's at least in that conversation for I don't know if he'd be my RB1. There's someone on the other side of this game who I'd probably be higher on.
Sure.
But he's not that far off.
Yeah, he's in that bucket of one of the top tier running back plays this week, and we're in firm agreement on that for the reasons you listed. They're playing hard, good matchup for them. Cowboys just lost another key defender this past week, so yeah, it's a good spot for Chuba. I agree that Rico Dowdle's up there with him, but Chuba's in that bucket for consideration to be the RB1 if Walker does play. Derek Carr seems unlikely to play this week, but interim head coach Darren Rizzi did not rule him out. Carr has a broken left hand, is in concussion protocol. He's not going to play. Don't lie to us, Darren. Alvin Kamara is the lone man left standing here. How much of the injuries hurt your view of Kamara against the Commanders?
Kind of a lot. It would stand to reason that he gets a lot of targets here.
Yeah.
And he's one of the few where I can kind of buck the trend of you want efficient offenses and you want running backs with touchdown potential, but he could get 14 targets in any game. That's kind of in his range of outcomes. The bigger issue is Kendre Miller.
Yes.
So you asked about this a couple weeks ago, and if you look at Kamara's snap rates in games with Kendre active, it's been under 60% the first 2, so back in week 7 and week 8. And then Kamara was kind of playing about 75-80% of snaps with Miller back out for 4 weeks. And then it went down to 71%. It's not terrible, but he was losing work. I needed him a lot last week, and he just was kind of nowhere to be found, which is sort of summed up most of his season. So I don't even think I could get there. I know the salary's down. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm also, if we kind of give a throwback, okay, so you haven't checked?
No, because I'm not going to use him.
We're going to do a throwback. Name that salary. Where and again, that's where you think he should be.
So assuming no Carr.
Yeah.
And with Kendre Miller working in, Kamara's role kind of stunk when Carr was out earlier on this year, understandably so. So I would say I needed 79.
His salary's 88. So
yep, I'm good. I'll pass on that one. Other side of that game is Commanders. Noah Brown, RIP, our guy. Going to miss a while. I'm very sad about that. Sounds like he has internal injuries, which also makes it worse. We'll talk about the Commanders in the trend section. Romeo Doubs should be back this week from his concussion for the Packers. Practiced in full on Wednesday. Does Doubs returning cross off Christian Watson and Jaden Reed for you in the Packers offense?
There is not a good market share to be found in this offense, and really any split, no matter. They've had guys in and out of the lineup. You can't really pinpoint a split where you're like, oh, this is, wide receiver X is getting a 30% target share. They don't operate that way. Josh Jacobs is the only one with an elevated role here.
I agree with that. Cedric Tillman able to get in limited practice on Wednesday, meaning he should return from his concussion this week. The Browns face the Chiefs in a game with projected 17-mile-per-hour winds. Jameis don't care. How would Tillman's return impact if you had Jerry Jeudy and then David Njoku? Njoku also banged up, I should note, didn't practice on Wednesday, so that's a factor here too. But how are you viewing the Browns in what could be a very gross weather game?
Yeah, the weather, I mean, effectively after like 10 miles an hour is whenever you start to really downplay stuff. Not downplay, downplay projection. Yeah, downgrade. That's tough. Now, the thing is, like in games without Amari, but with Tillman and Njoku, Jeudy, and Elijah Moore all active, you get like 20% target shares from all four of them.
Yeah.
That's like the anti-Packers where it's like, it's kind of the same, but it's also everyone's at 20%, not everyone's at like 15%. Like, so, and that matters to me, especially with the air yards on it. But I don't think I'm going to be here very often. You've been higher on Chiefs games lately. I'm not saying you are this week, but I can't really talk myself into this one too much. Mostly due to the weather, but also I just don't like Chiefs games. They've been pretty gross lately.
Yeah, I was worried I'd see value in the over for this game, and I pulled up my numbers. So I was at 45. Mark is at 44.5 after downgrading for the win. So luckily I can avoid it. And I don't have a lot of enthusiasm about either side in this one, which makes me very happy. Tony Pollard didn't practice Wednesday with an ankle injury. It could just be rest, but the Titans are also out of it, and he has a multi-year contract, so it's not nothing. They get the Bengals this week. How high would you be on Tyjae Spears if Pollard were unable to go?
I mean, it kind of stands to reason if there's no Pollard, Spears gets like an approximation of what Pollard's been at without Spears, but it's also not necessarily the case because Spears has been running behind Pollard all season. Is not as effective. I don't know if I need to get here. I'm not sure the upside is immense.
Yeah.
I don't know so I think this is one of those ones where I would typically say, like, I haven't seen it, and I know there's a lot of value in being right before things happen, but nothing here is making me want to play him.
Yeah.
Again.
I think I'd want to be there in tournaments because I think the ceiling would be there.
Yeah.
Especially given it's the Bengals. The Bengals, I'm not sure Sheldon Rankins' status this week, but they suck whenever he's not out there, basically. And so their only other back is Julius Chestnut, and they've shown he's a special teamer. So I think they'd probably give Spears quite a bit of run, frankly.
Yeah.
So $5,400, I would prefer not to be there for cash games because, like, you know, the Braylon Allen situation where it's like, yeah, he got me 10 points, cool, is very much in the range of outcomes. But he could also just be Tony Pollard. And I think he's a decent football player too. They don't, and that matters. But like, I'd be pretty cool with him for tournaments. Not like, I think you'd treat him similar to Allen last week, where I had Allen around, I think like 50% of rosters. I think that's probably where I'd wind up on Spears in tournaments, but I prefer not to have him in a cash game just because there are some concerns around that workload.
Yeah.
I might still wind up on him in cash, to be clear, but like, I wouldn't actively target him.
Yeah. I think you're a little higher on him than I am. Yeah. That's clear. I see appeal though whenever there's a guy named Jamar Chase opposite him, and like if you kind of balance out some salary there, you can more easily justify playing Jamar Chase. And that's not to say that I think Tennessee is going to play from ahead and therefore Spears will get rushing work and there's going to be passing ball. It's not that. I just like to stack games because I think there's merit to it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest selling point for me. Mm-hmm. Is if I want to get to Jamar Chase in a cash game, I'm more receptive to it. So
and Jamar Chase is pretty fun to get to if we can.
Yeah. Spears is more than just tournaments or games. Game stacks only. Yeah. I would use him in a one-off scenario, but are you
thinking like 30-ish%? Is that kind of where you ballpark it?
That's in my head. And you were saying about 45, 50%. Yeah. So yeah. And that's fine by me.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Let's now talk about the games to stack for this week and begin with the big bopper. That is the Bills at the Lions, by far the premier game of this slate. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook total in this game is 54.5, and the Lions, they were by 2.5, a little bit of movement towards the Lions here, I think because their injuries were not as bad as originally expected for them. Taylor Decker looked like he should be back. Keon Coleman should be back. Dalton Cage should be back. So we got all the dudes, Brandon. How are you viewing this game for stacking?
Just got to figure out the right way to do it. Yeah. I think the starting point here is this a 2 QB game for you?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. I think so too.
Yeah.
With Goff salary at 8,000, that's appealing. Of course, you would want to get to the man who now has more fantasy points among quarterbacks in a single game than anyone of all time, and Josh Allen for a salary of 1,500 more. He is much more the priority. He's pretty much a slate-wide priority, although he's not the only quarterback who's got sort of big-time potential. But Allen indoors again, which is sick. I don't know that he's going to handle as much red zone work. He was just like, give me the ball.
He had a 75% red zone share last week.
I don't know if they need to. They don't need to do that, but they chose to do it, and it was almost at the detriment of them for running. So I don't know what was happening there exactly, but I'll take it for fantasy. I just don't know if it was the best football decision.
Agreed.
So Allen, again, slate-wide priority. I would like to plug in Josh Allen and figure it out from there. There are other quarterbacks who are in play, but Jared Goff also appealing, especially because I'm coming around more on stacking pocket passers with multiple pass catchers.
Yeah.
Similar to the Sam Darnold situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was the 100th percentile outcome of what could happen. But if you believe in a pocket passer with concentrated target shares, then you can kind of get, when the correlation hits, you're going to benefit.
Right.
And Goff has really 3 pass catchers that we consider, and that's fine by me, especially with Jameson Williams' salary going down a bit. I don't know where it was last time we saw him on the main slate, just frankly because I didn't quite get there. But his role is still good. It's kind of sneakily better than you might think, and the salary's down. So Jameson's kind of in the conversation for cash games, not because I think his role is quote unquote safe enough, but because he's got a very fun role in a game that should go pretty wild.
Yeah.
So he might be my favorite play here. I guess outside of Josh Allen. Where are you with this game?
I kind of agree with you on Williams, frankly. Okay. If you look at the games with everyone being full, meaning Laporta, meaning him, etc., he's at a 19% target share. And when you have the big playability that he has, 19% moves the needle. 32% deep target share in those games too. It's $6,400 at home, indoors, slight home favorite. Like he checks every box you want for like a high A-dot wide receiver, but he's also getting more, what's the word? Unvolatile. Is there a word for less? He's getting more targets that are not as more catchable targets. There we go. Cool.
I believed in you. I knew you'd get there.
More catchable targets recently. 5 receptions in 3 consecutive games. Like if you told me J-Mo would be getting that this year, I'd be ecstatic. So I might not be cash game on him, but like core play for tournaments. 100% core play for tournaments. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the case for me where I'm coming from in cash games is we know what the role is, that his role has not really gone away.
Yeah.
And you put him in the most fun game possible.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a time to be really high on Jameson Williams to give us something, it is now.
Yes. Okay. You know me. There was a playoff game a couple years ago where what did we call Gabe Davis? What was his nickname? Big Game Gabe?
You called him Gabe the Babe.
Gabe the Babe. So Gabe the Babe against the Chiefs. He was like around the same salary range, got the same kind of targets, and he had like 4 touchdowns. JMO probably can't do that, but like that's kind of the vibe that I get from him is he's like the good version of Gabe the Babe. So I really like that profile when it's in a game like this, and it is. So I adore him. Going back to Goff though, you mentioned double stacking him with a couple of pass catchers. I might put 4 guys in that consideration because I think that Jahmyr Gibbs gets enough passing game work too, where I could go, okay, here is a Goff, Gibbs, JMO lineup. Here's a Goff, Gibbs, Laporta lineup. I might not do Gibbs, Laporta, but like, you know, you can do a lot of different iterations of Goff, Amon-Ra, JMO, you know, that kind of thing. So that's where I'm out on him. He's, I think, frankly, one of the top quarterbacks in the slate, a full tier, 2 tiers below Allen, but like definitely a guy I feel good about for this week, given he could go for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns because he did that a month ago.
Yeah. And again, you're expecting, whenever you stack a game, you're expecting the best case outcome. People might be like, this game's going to be a letdown for whatever reasons. If that's your prerogative, that's fine. And there's a lot of leverage in that, especially this week where it's pretty clearly the top game by like a full tier to me.
Yes.
But whenever you're expecting the best from someone like Jared Goff, you're not expecting the 5 interception game that he had. Like you're expecting the 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this is a relatively concentrated target tree.
Yeah.
You'd want to see it a little bit kind of better, but we always try to find relevant samples. And we've kind of seen Sam Laporta's snap rate spike the last 3 weeks. Not exactly like when he came back. But the target leader in that span is actually Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
And Laporta's at an 18% target share there. You tell me all the time about playing tight ends in games with high implied totals and team totals, high totals. Laporta at 6,000 is very appealing. Laporta, Goff, and Jameson could get you a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. That's appealing, and that's a way that you don't really break the bank necessarily.
Yeah. Or frankly, even Josh Allen with JMO and Laporta. You weaponize those savings you get from Laporta and JMO. I think that's pretty attractive too.
I was going to throw that out there too.
Yeah.
Where Allen's a lot harder to stack. It's kind of like a Bizarro kind of game where Allen's the much better quarterback play, but Goff has the much better pass catchers just by target share. So when you're playing Josh Allen and we're, you know, definitively he's my QB1, I'm pretty sure you've said that same thing.
100%. Yes.
Who are you stacking him with?
I know you're not going to like this answer, but it's Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper salary $5,900. Last week, 14 targets. He's still not running like every route by any means, but 14 targets and 8 of those were deep. He now gets to play indoors again. The Lions secondary is one of their actually healthy pieces. So it's not, you know, the injuries they've had are not going to benefit, or Cooper won't benefit from those necessarily. And yeah, Keon Coleman's back. Dalton Kincaid is back, but like Amari is probably the most talented pass catcher on this team. And they finally got him, found ways to get in the football last week. So I like Amari a lot at 95 or 59, Freudian slip. I was able to justify using him last week at times. Like Allen naked was I think my prime. I think I had like across 10, it was like 5 naked Allens. Yeah. And then, but Amari was in like 2 or 3 of the other ones. I was able to use him last week. I can now bump up that number. And like, I like this game enough too, where I'd consider him in non-Allen, non-Goff lineups. I'd probably have a game stack there too. So it's not like I'm not saying he's outside of game stacks, but like I'll probably have other game stacks where he's involved too.
Yeah. So he's kind of interesting. He does pop in various ways. But like his snap rate, it was up a little bit from, I mean, it was 54%. His route rate was down from week 13, but that's not the fairest comparison.
Yeah. But
he's at 56% of the routes. He just happened to get peppered. And we can see someone play 65% of the snaps, run 65% of the routes, somewhere in there, and still lead the team in targets comfortably. that just might be what we expect from Amari. The problem is you have to feel pretty confident that that's going to be the case. The thing that helps, though, is the salary in the game environment. Correct. So I'm with you where I guess I should have clarified. Like in terms of being a one-off, that's what I want. I wanted to see the snaps and routes go way up and the targets to be there. And like, oh, this is a, Jawan Jennings, just play. This is not really the case. So I don't want to chase the 14 targets and assume that they're going to be sticky because the role didn't change. So why wasn't he getting that target share before? So, but again, you're assuming the best case here. So it's probably might sound like I'm a little low on Cooper, just kind of pointing it out where he might not be peppered, especially with, the pass catchers getting healthier. So he's at your top. Any other Bills you like?
I am receptive to Keon Coleman at 54. I think Shakir's role last week was awesome. And I'm glad that I wound up getting there again at times just because I had so much Allen. It was kind of forced myself into Shakir. 3 deep targets there 2 the week before. But now that they have Cooper, Coleman, and Kincaid back, I think it'll kind of shift back into that more like gadgety role, which is like fun to watch. And it's good. Like he's good at it. I just don't think he'll have the juice that he showed last week. So and he kind of required a couple wild things to happen to hit his ceiling.
So he's going back to Khalil Shakir, not
Kabig.
Shakir.
Yes, exactly. Receptive to Coleman, probably won't have a lot if I have any, and it'd be only tied to Allen, frankly. And I'll have some Kincaid too, just because again, we talked before about like tying tight ends to absurd games. He is in a sicko game. Every Detroit linebacker is hurt. They're all gone. And they're gone for like the year too. So I think Kincaid's up there too. I like Laporta more, but I'll have Kincaid in quite a bit.
Too. I agree with you. The names we haven't talked about here, really Amon-Ra St. Brown, who again, I think this is a perfect game for St. Brown to give us 12 catches, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like if there's a game for it, it's this game.
Quickly on him, he's off the injury report this week. He was really banged up heading into Thursday night. So I think he seemed to, like on his first target, it kind of looked like he tweaked something again. Like he was kind of like stretching his back like right away. So I wasn't shocked that he got scaled back from there on out. So his salary came down. It's a baller slate. He's healthier. I'm higher on him now than I've been, I think, the entire year, frankly. He's a little bit like this week's Justin Jefferson, where I hadn't really been on him the entire year, was really high on Jefferson last week. I think Amon-Ra's kind of in that bucket. Now I squeezed Jefferson into like my highest dollar single entry lineup. I don't think I'll do that with Amon-Ra because I prefer Gibbs for that kind of role. But like he's kind of in that bucket where I haven't really used him, but I'm going to this week.
Yeah, I like him. He's not really going to be someone I play, although he kind of does fit the cash game mold where if they're again, we don't really talk about floor, but he should, if he's healthy, get double-digit targets here. So I'm again, as pretty much for this whole game, we've been on the same page.
Yeah.
Now I already spoiled this because we are on the same page again with James Cook. But anybody who is thinking of James Cook, I don't see it. I don't know. The
not
role's just not. Yeah.
Like he should be a $7,200 back who has a path to the ceiling. Like that's what it should be. And he's not.
He's like Aaron Jones, basically.
Yeah, kind of. I'd agree with that. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is this week's Puka Nacua, where it's like, okay, if I have Josh Allen as my quarterback in my single entry lineup, I want Jahmyr Gibbs on the opposing side. And the reason that I put Gibbs in that bucket is because he has the ability to put up a really big number in a given week. Look at the games he's played this year, and this is a full sample, not cherry picking anything, just the games he's played. 102.2 yards from scrimmage per game, 28% red zone share, which is definitely not amazing, but he's so efficient. If we think this game shoots out, that's probably because of some big plays from Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he makes a ton of sense. Is that a bridge too far for you to put him in the Puka Nacua kind of bucket where it's like, I'm going to have him in most or a ton of my Allen lineups? And is that because of Gibbs or is it because of the availability of really good running backs beneath him in salary?
It's both.
Okay.
You're still wishing for things to break Jahmyr Gibbs' way. And this team has shown us time and time again that they are more than fine to use my guy, David Montgomery, out there a little bit more than Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's a very good
use him
at
the goal line.
Makes sense, yeah.
Like, They don't have to give Jahmyr Gibbs
Mhm.
30 adjusted opportunities.
Mhm.
Can he get that?
Sure.
Yeah. Do they need to do it? Even if it's a back and forth game. David Montgomery was getting targets
He has been all year.
last week.
Yeah.
Like he's been getting more and more involved as a pass catcher. Like he started off a little slow, but then, so it's wishful thinking for me with Gibbs. Again, I can't get there with Nakua. Was like, no, he's getting carries and every target.
5 last week. He had 3 red zone carries last week.
So I understand where you're coming from, but no, you're higher on Gibbs than I am.
Fair enough.
Now that doesn't mean I'm high on David Montgomery because his salary is still elevated, but Gibbs is the better play as always. He's got a lot more yardage potential, upside, again, like yardage floor.
Yeah.
I just don't see myself going out of my way to play too many Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery lineups. The main caveat is I'm going to get some because I'm going to play so much Josh Allen.
Yeah. I think that the reason that I wind up being higher on Gibbs is when I think about those other 7,000 range backs, I think that Jahmyr Gibbs' odds of hanging a 30 burger on someone are higher than the odds that James Conner does it, higher than the odds that Chuba does it. Brian Robinson, who I like a lot this week, higher than Rico Dowdle. So I think like the 30 burger odds are higher for Gibbs than they are for those guys. And that's part of why I like him a lot for tournaments. I'll prefer those guys for cash, but for tournaments, I think that he's really, really fun.
It'll be his first.
Ever?
For this season, at least.
Oh, well, first time for everything. I think Puka's 30 was last week, his first one too. So just putting that out there. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
Puka's played like 2 games.
Yeah. So
no, there's a lot of, we went deep on it, but you had to kind of cover everyone. A lot of different ways to go. I think everyone's kind of in play among the logical options other than James Cook. So I'm excited for James Cook's 4 touchdown game.
The reason we went deep on it too is because the other games kind of stink for stacking because our second game in the bookmaker section has a total of 42.5 and has Tommy DeVito starting one side of it. That is the Ravens and the Giants. And the reason we're talking about this in the bookmaker section is because the Ravens have a sky high implied total, 29.5. They are 16.5 point favorites again with a total of 42.5. I'd assume we're not looking at bring backs here. So let's talk about the Ravens side of things. How are you viewing their offense against the Giants?
It lowers me enough on Lamar due to amount of pushback and how much they need to use him, which he's obviously the quarterback with the clearest case most weeks to compare with Josh Allen. I can't quite elevate him to that level in a game where there might not be anything, but this has like Lions Jags potential where Baltimore just wins 45-3 and everyone's great, but it's specifically like Lamar and Henry.
Yeah.
So this might be one of the first places I look when I'm not loading up on Josh Allen. That's not specifically to say it's Lamar Jackson because Derrick Henry could just flamethrower this whole thing. So lost in the conversation of the Jahmyr, I'll throw Jahmyr Gibbs in there at the 7K range. Like he's at the top. I get it. Let's just say Jahmyr Gibbs down to like, was it Rico's the lowest, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or Charbonnet. Those guys are great.
Let's exclude Charbonnet.
Okay. Those guys are very interesting plays with a great case. Lost in that conversation, and we'll talk about this more in the salary scroll, but I think it's really important for this game because there's only so many names to talk about in this game. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, potentially Joe Mixon if you feel that high on him. These guys, we're talking odds to get 30. These guys can get 35, 40. Do you think Derrick Henry sees close to 20, like he's got 24, 19 carries the last 2? Do you think we see like a 25 carry, 150 yard, 2 to 3 touchdown game from Henry? Or do you think that they don't need to do that because they won't need to do that?
I don't think they'll need to give him 23 carries. I do think he can still get you $150 though, because like, if you think about like, part of the reason he's appealing is because he can bust off a 98-yard touchdown because he's done it multiple times in his life.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll have to push him super hard, but I think he's still in play regardless. That's also, frankly, I kind of have the thought with Zay Flowers too, which might feel super, super weird.
I can't get there.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand why. But like, if you told me he went for $120 and 2 touchdowns in the first half and then did nothing in the second half, like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Mostly because he did that. Not the 2 touchdowns, but 115 against the Browns in the first half in 1 week. So I think that your reservation makes sense, and I don't want to go there. But I think that I kind of want to handle them similar to the way I handled the Eagles last week, where I have some lineups where I kind of just assume the Ravens put up 45 by themselves. And if they do that, who benefits? You know, the odds they do that are not super high. I think that if you were to bet the Ravens like alt total at FanDuel Sportsbook to score 44 plus themselves, you're going to get a pretty good number on that. But I think it's possible that it could happen. So, you know, in X percentage of my lineups, I have, okay, let's assume the Ravens do some silly stuff. Who benefits then? It's Henry, it's Lamar, it's Zay, maybe some Mark Andrews as well. Andrews, I don't think I need to make that assumption as much with. I don't like as much as I like Kincaid or Laporta, but like I'll have some again.
The Giants, so league average according to Next Gen Stats in rushing yards over expectation per carry allowed to running backs is 0.26. The Giants are letting up 1.21 per carry, which is about close to a half yard worse than anyone else on the season. Derrick Henry could have 3 like 50-yard rushes.
That's also mostly with Dexter Lawrence on the field in that sample, and he's now done for the year, and he is the best player on that team, offense or defense.
So, yeah, we can talk about our Chuba Hubbards and Rico Dowdles, but there is a path where if you don't have any Derrick Henry, you are in trouble. I can't quite say like he's a very obvious cash game play because he might not. You might see him on the sideline and they're like, we're just going to give Justice Hill some work because we're already up 10 points at the end of the first quarter and we're going to keep Derrick Henry fresh. That's a possibility. You have to factor that in. But like you said, what are the odds he can burn us? I think they're a lot higher this week than they have been in a long time. And that matters. Now, even with a loss, like they're not that screwed up in the playoff picture, but this game matters. So I don't think they're going to take.
They want to win the North, and the Steelers might lose this week.
So like they're not going to take the foot off the gas in this first quarter. That's not what I'm saying. But we've also seen Derrick Henry specifically just kind of out mysteriously. So I think this game is really simple with, I think Lamar is a really fun differentiation play because he could go nuts. Henry is really scary. I'm going to have, FOMO if I'm just building around a Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard kind of like core, for example. I think Tyrone Tracy's still appealing. He's been getting some underneath targets, which haven't really been there before. Like, again, going back, like watching some film, he was kind of getting like last ditch targets and kind of was bumping things up. It's a lot better. He had 10 targets this past week. So I don't have like super high hopes, but something of a pulse of a bring back, I think is appealing, but it's really Tyrone Tracy for me. So any Giants for you, like including Tracy?
I probably won't get to Tracy, frankly, because the rush defense of the Ravens is so good. Like like you said, 10 targets last week. So like he has value outside of that, but like I don't think he's going to get me in this specific matchup with his quarterback being who it is. I don't think he can get me 20. So I'd rather go Braylon Allen than Tracy personally. But yeah, so I probably want to be bring backs, but I think we're on the same page here where you kind of handle Henry the same way we used to. It's like, what's the odds he bursts if you're not using him? And then you use that to guide your exposure. Like I looked back at last week and I had 17% Saquon. I'll probably wind up in that same range for Henry, which might be below market. But like, I think that's kind of the way I want to be with him, just given that like there are a lot of situations which he doesn't go nuts.
Yeah, it's such a strange role, but it's not like it's a bad role. It's just really they're specific with how they want to use him. And but I can't get there with Zay. I can only get there whenever I think passing volume is going to be up, and I'm not convinced it will be this week. He could still kind of give us like a mini Jamar Chase where he's got 4 catches for like 102. I get that, but I don't know if I'm going to be on this game enough to get there. So it's mostly looking at Henry, even including Lamar. It's mostly looking at Henry and making sure I'm not being silly.
Okay, let's talk about our final game then. That is the Dolphins at the Texans. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook. The Texans favored by 2.5. Total in this game is 46.5. That has come down a point from where it was earlier on this week. Both offenses have had their issues. That is for sure. But we also know that they have upside. Like, they have talent on both sides here. Are you open to stacking this game, Brandon?
I mean, the salaries are very comparable to what we get for Buffalo and Detroit, which is a little, I don't want to say surprising. Like, I get it. It's in this section because it's one of the better games of the week. But Nico Collins' salary is $9,200. He might, again, just be the best receiver in football. Joe Mixon's at $9,000. Tyreek Hill, $87,000. Devon Achane, $86,000. Tua is at $83,000. But also at the same time, like, those are a lot of the names you would want to get access to here.
Yeah.
Like, this typically historically would have been like, okay, let's get some Tank Dell, Jalen Waddle mini stacks. Those guys' roles aren't really good enough to like justify. Now, could they be there in a game if this game is great? Yeah. Am I talking myself into it in case this game's great? I think it's a little bit more of that, which leads me to believe I'm lower on this game than consensus potentially. Where are you with this one?
I mean, I bet the under, so you're probably in the same range. When it was at 47.5, 47 is a key number, so I'm not as into it now. But I am still skeptical of the Texans. My hope is that they took the bye week to kind of like self-scout, look inside and figure out what the F's going on here, because like it's been so frustrating as someone who adores CJ Stroud. Like, figure it out, guys. You have talent and you can make this work. I know the line stinks, but like, come on, let's get it together. So that's the hope. And as a result of that, I think that there are scenarios in which this game pops off. And I think the encouraging thing about this game is if it does pop off, we know where to go. We go to Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, maybe Tyreek. His salary is a little bit higher than I want it to be. Waddle at 62 has a path to a ceiling. I think the Tank does too at 61. If we assume this game does well, Tank could pay off. So I think we know where to go, and that's encouraging. So I can say the odds this game is good are like 35%. Like, it's not super, super high. But within that 35%, I know where to go, and that allows me to still have stacks in this game, dabble in the waters without overextending myself to a game that I think could be pretty disappointing.
Yeah, so to sort of sum it up, historically, or I don't know, if these teams were just playing to expectation, I'd be like, yeah, Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell mini stacks to round things out. Like, that's awesome. But their roles aren't phenomenal by any means. Like you said, Houston's offense is just a little head scratchy. Miami's slow. There are paths to this game being really disappointing, but this could sort of be like the Vikings Falcons game from last week, indoors, and you want to get there. So this is still gonna. So like, and this is just how it is with me, but like I'm coming at it like pessimistically.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of high on it because, like you said, you know where to go.
Yeah.
You can get in and get out. Waddle Dell, I'm not going to play them in like one-offs necessarily, but stacking them together, we always love a low 6,000, game stack.
Let me ask you about that. Waddle and I know it's hard to like ask this question because we know what happened, but how do Waddle and Dell this week compare to, because we both like Addison Mooney stacks last week. How does this stack compare to that? If you can kind of put yourself back in that scenario last week.
Yeah. So we liked both of them. I think I'm like a half notch below with this one.
Yeah.
Because I had higher hopes of that game being really fun.
I'm a notch below because I like the roles for Mooney and Addison more.
Yeah.
But like these guys both have paths to a ceiling, which is part of what I want.
Like, I'm pretty sure Addison was basically leading in targets since like Hawkinson was back. Like, that's not what we're getting here. So
he's like 21%. Waddle's at 14% since Tua returned, but he also has a couple of 100-yard games. Well, I guess 99, but still.
Yeah. So like I get it, but I don't feel as optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna be here. I'm higher on Waddle than Dell. Dell's been kind of a mess all season.
Yeah.
But
I think if it weren't for the bye week, I wouldn't really be there with Tank. But has a bye week. He and Stroud have been like a half a beat off all year. And it's like, okay, were they able to unlock something to kind of get that back together? So we've seen it with him before. I mean, he's a talented player at home, indoors, et cetera, all the key things we look for a high A-dot wide receiver. In the games since Nico returned, Tank Dell's target shares are like not good, but they're also not abysmal. In that time, 3-game sample, I scrolled past it, 16% target share, but 33% deep. So like that's something. So I'll get there, but I agree with you where I'm lower on them than I was on Addison and Moody entering last week.
Yeah, like 40% air yard share in that 3-game sample. Why am I not higher? Like that's kind of what I'm asking myself. And he's due for touchdown regression, like 1.75-ish touchdowns under expected. I should be there, but this game for both teams, I don't know. It just feels a little strange, but maybe I'm talking myself into just being higher here because if I'm sure nobody's really clamoring to play Tank Dell.
Yeah.
And he's not that far removed from being pretty much an elite fantasy player. So hopefully they got some stuff figured out. I think this one's game stacks primarily, but we're also, we have the 2 stud receivers. I much prefer Nico to Tyreek.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's not to say I don't like Tyreek. And if I'm just getting here, maybe I do a different stack where I just pair them together in hopes they both go for like 150. But I think also interesting here, of course, is the running backs. Any thoughts on Mixon and Devon Achane?
Mixon much higher on personally than Achane because the Dolphins can't run the football, which really hurts his odds of getting the 100-yard bonus. We kind of talked about that a couple weeks ago, but like didn't flesh it out. And I think it's just kind of been reinforced since then. So like his odds getting 100-yard bonus, not great. Mixon's averaging 95.8 rushing yards per game in his full games, 57% red zone share, 120.1 yards from scrimmage in that time for $9,000. Like that's pretty sick. How would you, and this is a loaded question, Mixon versus Henry versus Saquon this week? Is Mixon at least in that discussion with those top 2?
We had this conversation a couple weeks ago too. Might have been the week where Saquon went just absurd, but Mixon has to be the lowest, I think, for me, due to the sheer probability of getting to like 35 or 40.
Yeah.
Although his red zone role allows him to do that, and he's got yardage upside. But he is in that conversation for me.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I'm low on Saquon is the game.
Yeah.
Mixon, though, 100-yard bonus very frequently on the ground, and you kind of inject him in here. He's getting targets. The red zone roll is good. So I should be higher.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it because you're going to yell at me. It's not accurate. It's not like,
no, do
it's
it.
not playing out.
Give it to me.
He's a little, I kind of view him like an Amon-Ra St. Brown in the sense of like, he always makes sense to a degree.
Yeah.
But I'm never quite there enough. It's not the same. That's why I kind of backtracked it. There might be a better example, but
yeah, I think he's got better upside than
he does.
Yeah.
That's why, again, you
No,
tricked me into saying it. Now you're yelling at me about it, but
not yelling, just having a discussion. Just 2 bros chilling.
So for me, like Mixon, I think where my head's at is I always like him, but don't get there enough. Whoever that is, whatever comp that is kind of, should I be higher? How do you rank Mixon versus Barkley and Henry?
I think I need Barkley 1. Frankly, I know that game is not fun. But like Saquon.
How do you not? How do you not? Right. Like that's the thing. Is like, how do you not?
It's only $3 difference. So like, I think I feel pretty good putting Saquon first. But like, I would like to get some Mixon, but I can't do it at the expense of having minimal Saquon. I think that's kind of where I wind up on here. So
is Mixon 3?
I might put him above Henry, but I like to have some of all of them.
I know. So like, maybe what I do is I find a lineup that I really like.
Yeah.
Where I have, 93?
Yeah.
And just sub them out, get them one of each in all of in those lineups. And then I got 3 lineups that are very similar, but If the rest of that lineup works out and one of these three guys has a huge game and you just pick the wrong one, I hate that stuff, which is why I play a smaller core. I try to maximize my minutes whenever things are right.
Yep. Final question quickly. Any quarterbacks in this game?
I don't think so.
I'm going to have some Stroud, I think. Just again, bye week.
Is this a do as I say?
No, it's not a recommendation, but I'm just want to be transparent with you. I can't recommend CJ Stroud, but like I'm going to do it. So it's very much as do as I say, not as I do.
It's like a Mahomes. It's like it should. Yeah. Why is this not better? But I mean, for him, I know he doesn't have any time to throw a pass, but
yeah. If they figured something out, he could have a great game at $740. So that's part of why I'm there. Okay, let's go into our trends discussion for week number 15 and begin by talking some Bengals. Bengals this week are taking on the Tennessee Titans. Titans defense at times has been scary, not so much recently. You're going to dig into what they've been doing recently and how to handle the Bengals in this one.
Yeah, so since they traded Ernest Jones, things aren't looking great. And that's appealing because the Bengals really need wins. They're coming off. They finally got a break to go their way. I think they're now 2-8 in one-score games or something. It's not great, but that's what they needed. And even with a loss, I believe they're technically alive with like a really, really improbable path, which it still matters. But look, the point is they're going to play hard.
Yeah.
The question is, does that going to matter against the defense that's really good? Well, the thing is, they're not as good as they were. So for the full season, according to NumberFire's schedule adjusted metrics, Tennessee's 16th overall in adjusted efficiency per play allowed, 13th against the pass, 12th against the rush. Through week 7, though, they were 10th overall, 15th against the pass, but 4th against the rush. Since trading Ernest Jones, they're 23rd in adjusted defense overall, still 15th against the pass, but 23rd against the rush in that sample. You don't got to really talk me into playing the Bengals. You have to talk me out of playing the Bengals at this rate. And that's not doing enough to dissuade me from loading up on our guys. This is probably where we mostly agree on a team is we just love their 3 big players.
Yes.
But Jamar Chase in 3 games with T. Higgins back in the lineup, he's averaging over 110 yards per game on 13.3 targets, which is a 32% target share. He's got a 40% air yard share and a 39% red zone share. Coming off of that massive game, I'm a huge believer in touchdown regression. I do not believe it's the case for Jamar Chase. It's different right now. T. Higgins averaging 80 yards per game on 9.3 targets, a 22% target share, 27% air yards, over 30% in the red zone. Doesn't have that, not coming off of the massive island game. I think that's nice, but the salary doesn't exactly scream value or anything like that, but I'm okay with it. And then it's our guy Chase Brown. Like in terms of target share, he's at 14% in this split. He's over 50 yards receiving on 6 targets per game. Overall, he's got an 82% snap rate, over 120 scrimmage yards per game in the last 3, with a 90% red zone rushing share and a 36% red zone opportunity share overall. So carries and targets going his way. They've got this trio. So Chase is at 28% of the total red zone looks. Jamar Chase, that is, to clarify. And T. Higgins is at 22%. So these 3 guys have accounted for over 85% of the red zone plays with T. Higgins back in the small sample. You can get virtually every touchdown, potentially every touchdown, depending on how things go, with those 3. So the double stack potential is alive. Joe Burrow is averaging over 340 yards per game, 3 touchdowns in this span. Again, like Cincinnati's not eliminated with a loss mathematically, but they're effectively eliminated with a loss. They got to keep the foot on the pedal. They barely scraped by the Cowboys. I think everything's lining up for another big game here. Joe Burrow's salary is 86. That's a little elevated, but if you want to talk about someone with 400 yard and 4 touchdown potential, Joe Burrow can do that. Chase Brown, 8,100, a little elevated. I think Chase Brown versus Jahmyr Gibbs is an interesting conversation. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. T. Higgins at 78 and Jamar Chase again, 94, but I don't think that matters at this rate. I think he's in that conversation of Saquon or Jamar.
It's a tough question.
Have to lean the running back overall, even though I think that game could be rough. But what are your thoughts here on the Bengals? Any bringbacks as well?
So I'm going to be very annoying and answer your question with a question. Do you prefer the Bengals offense or the Ravens offense this week?
That's a good question.
Because they're kind of similar, right?
In a way, for very different reasons, I guess.
Like, it's easier to predict where the ball will go with the Bengals, so maybe they're actually a bit more attractive.
Yeah,
they're not as good as the Ravens, and that's kind of maybe the difference you're leaning on here. But
no, it's a matter of Lamar or Burrow straight up. I'm going to go Lamar every time. Just,
yeah.
That's not
totally.
And the salaries aren't that different. It's that's part of this, but I think the Zay Flowers is interesting because there's not a lot of pass catchers for the Bengals or for the Ravens when there are, I guess, 3 if you want to include Chase Brown here as a pass catcher. But
yeah,
Zay Flowers could get a 30% target share, a 40% target share, and he could have 6 targets. It's just Jamar Chase with 30% target share, 32% could have 18 targets, right? That's the difference for me. And I think I like Derrick Henry. Okay, let's start here. Derrick Henry or Jamar Chase. Imagine you have a flex lineup, or you have a flex spot. You can play either one. I know it's going to depend on the rest of your lineup. I get it, but
Chase. I think it's Chase.
I think it's Jamar Chase too.
Okay, cool. I felt bad saying that, so I didn't know.
Which is kind of wild. Just because we always prefer running backs, but
yeah.
Now you said Barkley over Chase by a bit, a little bit at least.
But it's actually a discussion, which is never true for a running back in that range versus a receiver.
Yeah. So that's speaking very highly of Jamar Chase. You were asking the question earlier on, when's his target share is going to go up eventually. It's going up. Their touchdown regression is not, hitting, which is great. Just ride it out. There are seasons. I look at regression all the time. There are seasons where things are just outliers, and he's kind of on that path. So I like Chase. I like T. Higgins as sort of people probably aren't going to get there because the salary's up, but the role's still good.
Yeah.
If you think this team just throws and throws, it's also a little easier to justify a bring back, at least with Calvin Ridley. So and potentially Tyjae Spears. So I guess if you frame it that way, Bengals over Ravens.
It feels weird though, right?
It does feel awkward and it does feel wrong.
But I feel better about where the ball is going on the Bengals, and there's a better odds of pushback. So I think those things matter to me. And that's part, I didn't expect going into this that I'd be like, oh yeah, I prefer Bengals, but I kind of think I do the more I think about it.
I think I do as well.
Okay.
Due to the sheet, we got 3 flex eligible players for the Bengals. Okay, Chase Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs. If you have Chase Brown?
Mm-hmm.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And that's telling me a lot. So
I think that for me, my ideal build is I get no Kenneth Walker, and it means I can go Zach Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs. That to me is a sick lineup. I love the 7,000 range. 7,000 range is great. They're really good for cash games, but from an upside perspective, I like Brown and Gibbs more, and I'm willing to try to wiggle things around to get there.
Now, 100th percentile, 95th percentile outcomes, no one's touching Saquon or Henry or really Joe Mixon.
No.
But Chase Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, they're 90th percentile outcomes. They're still, you're not going to be dusted necessarily.
Right.
I think Brown's in that bucket. I mean, he's getting kind of like an Alvin Kamara type of target share. Not quite. It's 14%, but that's really fun. The defense is worse. I think Chase Brown is definitely in that conversation. If you look at what's the little number next to Chase Brown's name, defense wise, when you pull up FanDuel,
I don't know. I could pull it up because I have the thing here, but
20th. I thought it'd be worse, but I was hoping it was like a big
First.
red, like one.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, Chase Brown, I think, is great.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about another team with a really high implied total for this week, and that is the Washington Commanders, similar to the Ravens, coming off their bye for this week and facing the New Orleans Saints. The Saints also, similar to the Titans, traded an impactful defender. That was Marshon Lattimore, who is actually going to make his Commanders debut in an instant revenge game. Love it. You love to see that. I think the Saints' issues should put us on the Commanders this week. In games without Lattimore, Saints given a 0.08 adjusted defensive NEP per play, which is roughly league average. But a lot of that is due to what happened last week when they faced the Giants, where Drew Lock unfortunately let me down, as Drew Lock tends to do. If you omit that one game, they're at 0.16 NEP per play allowed, which is truly awful. They're at 0.13 against the pass and 0.15 against the run, so they're just getting shredded no matter what. The Commanders had slipped a bit before their bye, got that discussion of the Cliff with Cliff Kingsbury, but they torched the Titans in their final game before their bye and are now rested up. For the season, the Commanders are number five's fourth-ranked offense. They're fourth passing, second rushing. Now they get a terrible defense indoors. And we also know who to target here, which is Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson Jr., Terry McLaurin. Daniels 87, so he's close to Allen and Lamar, but he also has a tighter spread than Lamar and a better matchup than Josh Allen. Not going to go with Jaden and cash, but he'll be in my tournament player pool, I think. Robinson's salary is $7,300. He has gotten 100 yards from scrimmage only 3 times this year, but one of those was against Titans in week 13 with Austin Eckler sidelined. He's healthier now, so I like him for tournaments at that salary. McLaurin's salary is 82. That's high enough where I won't use him outside of Jaden Daniels lineups, but if I use Daniels, I'm probably going to use McLaurin too. Does have 100 yards in 5 games, and now their target leader, Noah Brown, is out as well. So are you going to target those 3 guys specifically, given none of them come with low salaries?
This is actually really similar, not just geographically, but to the Ravens.
Correct.
Where there's a quarterback with upside.
Uh-huh.
There's a running back who at salary has a lot of appeal. And there's, if they throw a lot, the ball should go to one really good player. Now, McLaurin at 82, that's asking a lot. He's had some big plays, some, because he's good, but also it's not all just. Does he have when's his last double-digit target game? Does he have one?
Week 4.
Oh my gosh. That's brutal.
So he's AJ Brown, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a fair comp, but adjusted for salary and everything. Now with Brian Robinson, he's been banged up, and I have season-long exposure to him, so I'm always tuned in with what he's doing. There are games sometimes where he just is injured. They limit him a bit. That Tennessee game came in a little questionable, torched him, and then the game was just iced, and he just didn't play. So you're obviously not wrong about the 100-yard, what he's done, but I don't know if it's fully indicative of what to project forward. And so, to clarify, we've seen it from Brian Robinson, so I'm not we haven't seen it this year a ton. We know he can be a featured back who's really good. And the thing here for me that makes me less concerned about getting yanked is health of the other, Commanders running backs. But also, according to Next Gen Stats, the Commanders have the second highest leverage implications in the NFC this week. Their delta between their odds if they were to win this week to make the playoffs and to lose. They can't mess around. Brian Robinson should be able to move the ball. He's a very good football player. So I kind of like Robinson. I can't put him over Rico. I can't put him over Chuba, but he's in the conversation. So I think the real thing now is okay, if you like Brian Robinson, do you think this game's competitive? Do you want to bring it back? Or are you okay kind of playing Robinson by himself? It's by himself for me.
Yeah. I'm not using any Saints. I could not be paid to use a Saint this week. But I'm fine with that just because, like you said, it's an important game for the Commanders this week. They're indoors coming off a bye. They have 40-point upside. And I think that's tough for me to turn down.
Yeah. Now, Marquez Valdes-Scantling did sort of receive wide receiver 1 treatment, but I can't do it.
Tied to maybe Jay Kaner or Spencer Rattler.
Can't do it.
I'm not getting there. But I want to have some Commanders in my life this week, despite the fact that the game is one-sided. I think that they're good enough to justify that. So I think we have a good subset of offenses to target this week between Bengals, Commanders, Ravens, and then the games in the game stacks. I think that we got some offense we could feel good about this week, and I do like that quite a bit.
But I don't think any come close to Detroit and Buffalo.
I agree.
So that's telling. Yes. And it's more a matter of, look, for me, I'm going to play Detroit and Buffalo, and then I can filter in mini stacks here with these other teams. That's awesome. That's what I want out of a slate, honestly.
I agree. So. It's a fun setup for sure. Weather for this week could be pretty gross in a couple of spots. Primary one being Cleveland for the Browns and the Chiefs. 18 mile per hour winds there with rain in the forecast. I didn't check to see the temperatures. Maybe it's snow, but that's not fun. Does push the total down there. 10 mile per hour winds in Jacksonville for the Jags and the Jets. Not super concerning there. And similar thing in Nashville for the Titans and Bengals. 11 miles per hour there. Not a massive concern, but worth checking back on later to make sure that does not increase. All right, let's go position by position, breaking down our top plays across FanDuel for this week. Brandon, let's begin things off at quarterback. We kind of discussed a lot of guys we're at least willing to consider. When all is said and done, Josh Allen is QB1. I feel like we can feel pretty firm in that, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
We talked about him.
Thoughts on Allen?
No, I'm not even worried about the matchup on paper. Just, I think it's overthinking it, and there's enough value in terms of like $7,000 running backs, et cetera, to want to get there. And every game's going to matter for Buffalo moving forward until it doesn't. So for now it does. And I want to be there.
Okay. Now the tougher question. Who's your QB2?
That is a tougher question. It very easily could be Lamar,
sure,
which is like, okay, that's a little obvious, but in the event that Baltimore just goes out and puts up 45, it's going to be through Lamar.
Yeah.
And I think that's appealing. But more realistically, like I like Jaden, I like Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I said I don't like this game a lot, but Jalen Hurts at 85 is kind of staring us in the face. He doesn't throw the ball like ever. So he's not Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He's not Lamar. He's something in between with the potential to score 3 times on the ground. Do you have any interest in Hurts?
Yes. I think you kind of have to have interest, right?
Right.
From a rushing perspective, he's QB2 on the slate behind. I'd put him above Lamar just because Lamar doesn't do tush pushes, whereas Allen and Hurts do. So he's not my QB2, I don't think, but he has to be in that discussion, I think, at least.
Yeah. In a week where there's not a clear definitive QB2, if you're not considering Jalen Hurts at a lower salary than we've had him for a long time.
Right.
I'm going to just take a longer look. Now, I'm going to where are you with that game? Where's your model have stuff? Do you think there's points?
Yeah. I took the over. It's not super high. So let me pull up here. If I see, not by difference. So as far as totals this week, I have Buffalo, Detroit at 55. So in line with the market there. Second is redacted. Third is also redacted.
You have to tell us. You can't just do that.
It's published on FanDuel.com/research and just free.
Okay, company man, great. But
I've got Commanders Saints. Got it really high. And that's with a massive down. I've got Jay Kaner / Spencer Rattler projected to be doggy do. But what they do is because they're inefficient, they set up short fields, and that jacks up the scoring expectation for the Commanders. So because the spread is so large, the total winds up being large too.
Yeah.
Same thing for Ravens Giants. It's the same dynamic at play there. So it's one-sided, but it's very high in both those games. I do have the over. I have this at 45.4 for Philly, Pittsburgh. Total's 42.5. So
yeah, I think Jalen Hurts, you just say, do you think he scores multiple times on the ground? Great. But do you think there's push, but not pushback? That's not the right, do you think he's throwing the ball more?
Yeah.
I'm not convinced of that.
Unless they
So I can't
decide,
make
okay, the bad vibes need to go away. We're going to make AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts friends again. They're going to hold hands. They're going to sing on the playground, stuff like that. Maybe.
so yeah, this could look silly in hindsight, not to just have him like QB2 at a lower salary, but I can't quite get there, like you said. But I still don't know exactly who QB2 is. I do prefer Jared Goff.
Yeah.
But
So that's what I was going to say is I think if you give me Jim, you only have 10 lineups. I might just go only Allen and Goff.
I might do that as well. I prefer Goff to Tua.
Yeah.
I prefer Goff to Hurts in a general overall sense.
Yeah.
Not a true ceiling sense. Although, to be honest, like we can talk about the rushing touchdowns for Hurts, but without passing, your ceiling is only so high.
Correct.
So Goff is probably where I'm going for QB2
Mm-hmm.
in a game. It's indoors. We should expect this is a Jared Goff script.
Yep.
For him to have a big game. That's not a guarantee that he will, but he's shown us the ability to do that. And if it exists, it's in a game like this.
Yep.
No Patrick Mahomes.
Nope. I think Kyler is at least worth considering.
He's a light for me.
Light is the right way to phrase it, which means he's probably not going to be my player pool.
Yeah.
Because I do want to get some Jaden, want to get some Lamar, stuff like that. But realistic, I'm not going to use him, but I did want to at least mention that he exists.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say an important game for them because their odds are not ideal, but they can't lose. So that's interesting.
And New England's defense is bad.
Yeah. So Kyler over Mahomes and Baker. I do think Bo Nix is relatively interesting. I probably won't get there
because they've been too efficient. They've actually been good offensively, so he stopped running. If he kept running the way he was, I'd be considering it, but he just hasn't.
This Denver-Indianapolis game is the game of the week.
Yes.
For playoff implications. So if there's a week to start running it again, it could be this one.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
And without a clear cut, QB2, I think that's interesting. The harder part is it's just basically Cortland Sutton and get out. Yeah. Which is not ideal. I mean, it's ideal in a sense, but do you want any bringbacks here?
No.
If I have one,
I think the issue with Knicks is I'd rather just go CJ Stroud.
Right. What I'm getting at is it's one thing to be aware of the case for Bo Nix. It's another to say, I'm going to play Bo Nix in a game that I'm kind of iffy on. I think it's important. I'll play him with Cortland Sutton, who I'm really mostly playing because I'm playing Bo Nix. That stuff all matters.
Sutton's a standalone play for me. I think I'm higher on him than you are.
All right. We'll have that conversation when we get to it.
I like him a lot, actually. I might use him in our head-to-head this week, frankly.
Okay. I could see it. I could see it. But again, I don't like to play. Once you get to 7K as a receiver, and I don't really love your game.
Yeah,
I start to pump the brakes a bit. That's just a me thing, though.
No, I hear that. I think that if I'm gonna spend below 8,000 though, below Goff, it'll be on Stroud. I think that he's the one guy below there I'm wanting to go to. Again, nothing you've seen this year would say you should use CJ Stroud. If you look at this year, you're saying no. Why would I do that? But the Dolphins, I had the under for the Dolphins Jets game last week, and their secondary was trash. They could not cover anybody for whatever reason. It was very frustrating to watch. And now they're facing Stroud off a bye. We know the talent's there. We know he's got pass catchers. We know to stack him with. I think if I'm going below 8,000, it's via CJ Stroud for me.
Yeah. I'm warming up, but I'm probably not going to get there. You said, might just be Goff and Allen unless I'm extending past 10 to 15 lineups.
Yeah. I love Jordan Love. Think he's playing good football right now. Just don't like the matchup with the Seahawks. They're also playing really good football. So I want to buy into him eventually as a standalone play, not stacking him, but this is not the week for me.
Yeah, I'm not there. Not there in Geno.
Jameis. Nope. Yep.
Not with a win. 300-yard Aaron.
The first time since pre-COVID, basically. Yeah. No. So to me, it's Josh Allen, one of the bullet. I think that he is a guy I'm willing to make consolations to get to in a head-to-head or a 50-50 contest. I'm willing to make consolations to get to him, in part because I don't know who the QB2 is. So Allen, QB1, tier of his own. And then the other love for me is Goff. Firm likes are Jaden Daniels, Lamar, and Stroud.
Yeah, I kind of wasn't listening. I was trying to figure out my own list, but I'm going Allen number 1, Goff number 2.
Okay.
And you said below 8K, you're going to
Stroud.
I'm going back again once more to Kyler Murray.
I had him on my list, so I don't want to push back on that.
I would rather play Kyler than Stroud.
You sound so disappointed, and I know that's because you are. Like, I know you well enough.
He's just broken my heart so many times.
One more time. Okay, yeah. Running back. We said before Saquon is the one of the studs. Any pivoting from you on that?
No, I just think like role wise, the only reason I'm even like at all low is just I respect Pittsburgh's defense, but
they've struggled a lot against the rush recently.
Like, but they've been just pretty bad. Sort of holistically, I don't know if Jalen Hurts can really move the. So it might be a little more on Saquon than I would want. And again, once you get up to like over 9K, I got to nitpick and I got to be aware of the potential downsides. The role though is so good. He's so good. He can make things happen. I have to be higher on him than Derrick Henry in a game where he might not get tackled once.
Right. Like, 3 carries, 3 touchdowns, 120 yards.
He just kind of gets bumped out of bounds basically but so I'm going Barkley. I still have to go Henry over Mixon.
Okay.
I think I have to do that.
Okay.
That feels wrong. Yeah, it feels too afraid. But if there's a Derrick Henry 200-yard 3 touchdown game, it's this one. So
yep, that's fair. Okay, I agree with you on all those thoughts there. No Kamara, no Achane, no Brees. I don't think he'll play. No James Cook. Then we get to the Josh. Well, sorry, did I skip anybody you want to talk about there or no?
No.
Okay, cool. So we get to the Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs range. We both like Brown. I think that he's a love for us, right?
Brown's a love, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you on Jacobs? We haven't talked about him yet at $8,200 against the Seahawks.
I think process-wise, I might be higher on Jacobs than Gibbs.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was going to ask you if you wanted to bet on them but I realize that's stupid because I'm betting on Gibbs because I like the upside, not the median.
Yeah. Outcome. So like sort of again, process wise,
yeah. Which is what you're saying the same thing. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's Jacobs. Game wise, it's Gibbs, which basically leads me to Chase Brown over both by a good amount. But I'm more like, so again, process wise, I think Jacobs makes a lot of sense. He could be the name where it's like, oh, he scored twice, had 120 scrimmage yards, should have just got there, but I didn't because I played Jahmyr Gibbs in game stacks. That stuff happens. So Jacobs, probably another name where I like him more than I play him. A little bit similar to a Joe Mixon. Sure. But the salary being what it is now, coming off the 3 touchdown game, I would go Jacobs over Gibbs again in a vacuum with the weird caveat that I'll probably have more Gibbs than Jacobs due to stacking that game.
Any James Conner, 79 against the Patriots this week.
He is interesting to a degree, but at 79, I don't think I'm going to get there.
I think on a worse running back slate, I'd be there, but because I have so many names both above and below him, I don't feel the need to do it. Same thing with JT, like Jonathan Taylor, good red zone role recently, super tough matchup. I just don't.
Like Connor did have his high.
Go ahead.
Connor did have his highest snap rate since week 8 last game. Like it mattered. Like this game matters. So
like the odds he has 30 on you, I think are much, well, they might not. They're much lower than Gibbs, Brown, etc.
And Jacobs, yeah.
And I think they're lower than Chuba, maybe even.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So frankly, I don't see anyone after Gibbs. No one I really want to use until we get down to Chuba at 75. Do you disagree with that?
I think it's a little disrespectful to David Montgomery, who, again, we just never play.
Yeah.
It's a pure upside conversation with him.
Yeah.
And he's not getting 30, so.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think that's kind of what I need for the guys above 7,000 this week is because there are so many guys who can get 30 is, can you get me 30?
Yeah, when you have Saquon breaking records and Henry against the Giants and Joe Mixon's 95% red zone role and in a game that could be good, you need to have your sights set on a ceiling. So I'm with you.
Now, I do think Chuba can get 25, which is enough for me. I think Brian Robinson get 25. Rashad White, if there's no Bucky, can get 25. And Rico can get 23. So that's fine at 71. I'm fine with that. Yeah. So that's why I like those guys. How would you rank them though? The guys between Dowdle at 71 and Chuba at 75.
Okay. I probably said different things at this point, but Chuba,
I agree.
Just due to the fact that he could play 90% of the snaps. I was heavily assuming it'd be Rico, but I'm really warming up to Brian Robinson.
Okay.
I think I'm going to go Rico, though.
Okay.
And then Robinson.
But Robinson is in that discussion for you.
I think so.
Okay. I agree. In large part because his quarterback is Jaden Daniels versus his quarterback being Cooper Rush. And like that may sound simplistic, but like both guys have amazing matchups. I have the Commanders in team total much higher than where I have the Cowboys at. I think that those factors matter. So if you gave me like a cash game lineup, I'd probably go Dowdle. But for a tournament, I prefer Robinson. Is that distinction okay by you?
Yeah. So like the thing with Robinson is he gets an opportunity on about half his snaps, which is a really high rate. So if you're injecting him into assuming a sort of a bigger role in an important game, that matters to me.
Yeah.
That's why he's in the conversation. Dowdle, though, has shown yardage upside. He looks really good. The matchup is nice. Again, Carolina's playing tough, but so I'd go Chuba, Rico, or if there's no Bucky, where do you have White in this conversation though?
Probably he's either first or second.
Okay.
If there's no Bucky. I think Bucky will play, but like I think he's first or second, right?
He's probably second behind Chuba.
Yeah,
just kidding.
I agree. I put him above Robinson because the passing game is so good.
Yep.
Frankly, I might put him above Chuba because of the passing game too. I don't know. He's closer to Chuba than he is for Robinson if there's no Bucky, I think.
Honestly, though, I think the bigger conversation is we've got four names. Right now, we have Chuba, we have Robinson, we have Rico. We might have Rashad, right? How do they realistically factor into lineup construction? Do you think you want to play three of them? Charbonnet, we get it. Like, we might get him, but he's not that much lower salary than Rico. So it's just kind of stick with me sort of in this range. Do you want like two of these names plus a Saquon, Mixon, Henry? Do you want one of these names? You want like a Chase Brown and you want like one of the top three guys? Like, how do you envision sort of constructing lineups? Because you could go three of these names as running backs. You could go stud, second tier, this tier. Like, how are you kind of feeling things out? Or do we need to finish running back first and then we kind of go back to it?
No, because it drops off after here.
I think so too. So
if I get Charbonnet, ideally I want like only one of these guys.
Okay.
Because I want to have exposure to Chase Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
So it's really about the ceiling. Now, frankly, for like a head-to-head, I might have three of them because I think they'll have really good floors. But it's more about the ceiling. The ceiling is why I want to get to those guys below and above them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting week. We've got a lot of names already on Thursday who, barring some weird setbacks, like we know what we're going to what we should expect, not what we're going to get, but what we can expect sort of from a workload standpoint. And I'm with you where I don't want to just click these like three of these names and move on because there is upside questions. I love Chase Brown. Again, Josh Jacobs for only a little bit more could be way more impactful. So we like these names. We can split hairs and kind of say, who do you prefer? Which we did. I think it's important, but it's not about which three of these do we plug in and go from there. So we're on the same page.
Okay, cool. Charbonnet, if there's no Walker, I think he's borderline 100% kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm just going to go. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
100%.
And then we get to the Tyrone Tracy, as you alluded to. I can skip Ramondre, right?
I guess, yeah.
I just don't think he's got the juice. 67 yards per game this year.
His team has no yardage potential for anyone in particular.
Yeah. So Tracy 65, Braylon Allen 64. Let's say we don't get Charbonnet. Are you willing to jump down to Tracy and Allen in order to give yourself more leverage to get Josh Allen as a quarterback? Or would you rather spend down at receiver? Because I think I'd rather spend down a receiver.
I think I'd spend down a receiver.
Yeah.
I would rather not the same exact salary, not the same exact repercussions here, opportunity costs, but if you're talking Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell types, or Tyrone Tracy and Braylon Allen, I'm going Waddle and Tank or Jameson.
Yes,
they stand out to me more. So
I will have some Braylon Allen, assuming the Brees sits this week, but I would like it to be limited. That's kind of where I settle in. Any other running backs you wanted to shout out?
I don't think anyone really jumped out to me.
Unless we get no Tony Pollard, in which case Tyjae Spears becomes a good play. Okay,
so let's have that conversation quickly.
I'm going Tyjae. If we get no Ken and no Tony Pollard, I'm probably having Tyjae Spears, Zach Charbonnet in a lot of lineups, and then weaponizing that third slot for Saquon, Chase Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, stuff like that.
That's how you get to Jamar Chase easily. That's how you get to Josh Allen and Jamar Chase together. You can get 90 points from them.
My gosh.
I mean, all right, 80, we'll call it.
Sick. Yeah. All right, cool. Receiver. Oh, wait, sorry. Loves at running back. I'm going to go
Loves
Saquon,
at running back.
Actually.
I'm going to say Chase Brown.
Chase Brown, yes.
I'll say Chuba.
Okay.
Hard to turn down that snap rate in that role. I think he's good.
Good matchup.
And once again, Saquon's winning out for me. Just he's got so many paths to a huge game. Henry's got one. Mixon, he's got strong yardage upside, but not 302 scrimmage yard upsides necessarily. So I'm gonna go Saquon. So I'd say my three loves probably Brown, Chuba, and Saquon, with Rico and maybe a Rashad without. Bucky, and obviously a Charbonnet without Walker kind of being my top five.
I think Charbonnet without Walker is the RB1. And then loves outside of that to me are Chase Brown, Saquon Barkley. So in agreement with you there. Kind of want to put Jahmyr Gibbs in as my other one. I know salary-wise it's kind of tough, but from a Turner perspective, I love how he works with Josh Allen.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Receiver. We didn't talk a lot about this, but Jamar Chase or Nico is Chase, right?
It's Chase for me.
I agree. I would like to get some Nico because if I go Stroud, I'll have Nico, obviously. But Chase is phenomenal.
I don't have questions about the offense for Jamar.
Yeah.
We love Nico on this podcast.
They do.
I just have enough questions where, look, I might guess wrong. I get it. But I don't know if going Jamar Chase is ever really wrong.
No.
If you can get there. So Kenneth Walker, rest up.
Yes.
Tony Pollard, rest up.
Yes.
And we get the potentially Tyjae Spears, Jamar Chase.
Correct.
So at least in-game somewhat correlation there.
And even if not, we still can use Calvin Ridley if we want to. So you can game stack it regardless, which is nice.
So I'm going Jamar over Nico. Same. And over Tyreek's kind of game stacks only. That salary doesn't leave any room for error.
It got up more than I was hoping it would.
Yeah. It the role was good.
Yeah.
He's probably getting healthier.
Yeah.
I get it, indoors this week, but between the three, I'm just ranking them in order of salary. But now Tyreek or AJ Brown.
Yeah. How much squeaky wheel narrative are we buying into with AJ Brown?
Do you think he bumps up from 6 targets to 7 this week? You think he gets 7? I mean,
7 targets for a 45% target share.
Yeah. So he hasn't had double-digit targets since week 1.
Mm-hmm. He has not had double-digit targets in the United States this year.
Yeah, he's got over 7 targets once since week 2. He's a very good football player, but
he's
you're
amazing,
talking,
yeah.
you're selling yourself on things are going to change.
Yeah.
If things stay the same, his path is still there because he's that good, but it's very minimal. So
I agree.
Tyreek, AJ Brown, or Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Amon-Ra.
Which
is shocking for me to say.
Wow, I did not expect that. I figured you'd say Tyreek.
I'll just be higher on that game. So
that's it.
And he's healthier, which helps that he was. Indoors, at home, sick total. I think I'll go Amon-Ra there.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I'm not getting to Lamb, not getting to Mike Evans this week, I don't think, given that I've got other options.
Yeah.
Terry only with Daniels. I'd probably put him in every Daniels lineup, frankly. And just say
probably
just do that. JSN's a no, right?
Yeah, probably a no, but he's fun at least. So we'll put a pin in him.
No Devontae in a good matchup. Just don't care there.
I can't even do Malik Neighbors in a bring back, unfortunately.
Nope.
So
Nope.
T.
78's a good salary for him.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the games, I just want to look at the games he's played this year because I think that's still the best sample. In that sample, T has a 26% target share, only 23% deep. Kind of interesting. 29% in the red zone, though. So that's enough where I will use him. So I think T's solid. Obviously, we prefer Chase even at salary, but T's still solid, right?
Yeah, and he's still at the top of our T rankings, right?
Who were the other considerations again? Sorry.
T.
I got some orange tea. Update on Teagate. I got some orange tea. It's very good. Just wanted to throw that out there. Caffeine-free orange herbal tea. It's good.
Okay.
Just updating.
I'll trust you, but I ain't drinking tea unless I'm sick. So,
no Devontae. I can talk myself into AJ Brown, but I can't talk. Frankly, if I can't talk myself into AJ Brown, I can't talk myself into Devontae.
Yeah, not at 77 either.
No DK. I don't like that game enough to be super high there.
He's kind of a buy low.
Sure.
Things kind of line up, but I'm not there.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson against the Jaguar. Okay.
I'm lower on Zay than I was.
So now in the look, you're asking when you're looking at Zay Flowers, you're asking, are they going to throw the ball?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. If they're going to throw the ball, he's going to get a 30% target share, 35%, 25 to 35, and he's good.
All right.
Okay.
Can I give you the pitch for Courtland Sutton?
Now, looking at the 7K range, Courtland Sutton jumps out a lot to me.
Correct. That's part of why.
Yeah.
So the 7,000 range is not good. But also, if you look at just the entire sample this year, all year, not looking at, since that Saints game, stuff like that, 25% target share, 40% deep, 33% inside the red zone, and Bo Nix is chucking it deep more now than he was. Colts don't generate a lot of pressure. The one spot where Nix does struggle is when he's put under pressure, and he's probably not going to be this week. So Sutton at 72, I think he's a head-to-head consideration this week for me.
Yeah, I think the question is, the yardage upside's been better.
Yeah. Can he go for 150?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
And now if you say who else in that range kind of can, Zay could.
Ladd could if he's fully healthy.
Garrett Wilson could if he gets 16 targets, I think.
I think he had 100 yards, but he had 16 targets. I remember that game was just abysmal. 23 targets, 101 yards. Awesome. Love that. So I think that Sutton is my favorite in this range.
Yeah, and
Sutton or T, considering salary.
T.
Okay. Probably T for me too, but I think it's a discussion.
Yeah. So Sutton jumps out there, depending on, and sometimes you just build a lineup you like, and then you're in this range, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
I have no problems with Sutton. I don't want to go there primarily, but that's
not
fine.
A priority, but he's a guy we're fine with in that range.
Yeah. Low on, I'm not getting to Shakir at 7.
Agreed.
Not to Judy at 69 in the wind.
Agreed.
Brian Thomas has a great role, but
he
not
does.
This week.
Yeah, Sauce Gardner's back this week too, which hurts him. Marv is facing Christian Gonzalez, who I respect a lot. Hasn't had an amazing role to begin with, frankly, so I'm not going to get to Marv.
No Hopkins. So then we get to Jameson.
core play, well, maybe not cash games, but core play for tournaments. He is a love for me, and I feel pretty good saying that.
I think he is a cash game consideration.
Consideration, yes.
I think he's going to be in my main lineup.
Yeah, main lineup, he probably will be. Like, my main lineup is probably going to be Josh Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, maybe Amari Cooper as well.
That's fine. It's just, again, the role's actually better than it used to be.
It is.
And you're now putting him in a game where you would expect things to go his way. So I'm there.
I agree. So then we get down to, I'm not getting to the Colts, guys. I know that Riley Moss is probably out for the Broncos again, but I don't care. They're going to have 7 completions in that game. So, which brings us down to Jalen Waddle and Tank Dell. Waddle has a hamstring injury, he was limited in practice Wednesday. I hope that doesn't mean he got hurt Wednesday, because that would stink. But he's shown the ability to have pop games. That's not enough for me to use him in like a head-to-head lineup. But for a tournament, we know he can blow up because he's done it recently twice. So I like Waddle for tournaments. I like Tank Dell. Neither of them are near Jameson to me, but they're both guys I'm willing to use. How do you feel about those two?
Yeah, they're basically mini stack options. I don't really want to use one of them without other sides in that game. So, but this is typically where I want to live.
Yeah.
Not want to, but tend to have to. So, and yeah, they're standing out to me. So,
okay,
Tank Dell over Christian Watson.
Yeah,
sure.
I give you $6,100, and you don't have any Bengals. Would you go Calvin Ridley in that lineup, assuming you have no Bengals, over Tank Dell?
Yeah,
I think I would too.
So I project out air yards, and Ridley always leads. I think you project second by a fraction.
That's cool.
I think he's second by a fraction if Excel would not bust when I need it. But
okay. Can I guess who is he behind Chase?
Let me see here. He is first over Cortland Sutton by a smidge.
Okay.
Christian Watson, though, is third.
On 5 targets.
And then, So Ridley always jumps out to me.
Yeah.
A good amount. So I'd get there. Ridley or Amari. Let's say it's a lot. Maybe like it's a
Stroud lineup.
Yeah. The only time you're not playing one of the two quarterbacks from his game.
I'd probably still go Amari just because I kind of want exposure to that game in every lineup.
I feel like if I'm not going with a quarterback, I'm more receptive to avoiding it more. So I'd go Ridley.
Okay. I think it's a good discussion. I could go either way, but I prefer Cooper just because, again, 14 targets last week, indoors, psychopath game, 8 deep targets last week. I know that Keon and Kincaid are back, but Amari's Amari, so I'm fine with it still. If Ladd does not play, would you consider Quentin Johnston at $5,900?
Oh my gosh. Maybe.
Yeah.
I would like it more if I like the other side.
Sure.
But if I go like Rashad White so if I need to get to someone in the 7K range, I do like to just make sure I have my stack. So White plus Quentin Johnston is appealing. I have big question marks about the true ceiling for Johnston, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, I agree. Last week with no Ladd, he had 7 total targets, 3 deep, 1 in the red zone. He's actually had a good red zone role the entire year when he's been healthy. So, he's what he is.
Josh Palmer had a better role.
Josh Palmer did have a better role, and Josh Palmer's salary is 55. He's actually the next guy out of my list as someone I'd be willing to discuss. Are you okay with skipping over the Batemans of the world, Calvin Austins, Parker Washingtons, those guys, and jumping all the way down to Palmer, or no?
Yeah, if there wasn't wind, I'd like Tillman a little bit, but
the
Chiefs are tough on receivers kind of generally, but let's go to
Palmer. I would need Ladd to sit, but in the game without Ladd, 9 targets, 2 deep, none in the red zone. But like I've liked Josh Palmer as like a football player for a bit, tied to Herbert. Secondary is banged up on the opposing side, so I'd be fine with him at 55. Wouldn't seek him out, but fine with it.
In a different week, like a Jalen McMillan, Josh Palmer, just whatever stack and kind of go nuts elsewhere. I don't think it's the worst thing. Like, I think you can make worse decisions, but I'm probably not. I'm not seeing like a ton of low end value, and I'd rather not go below Amari most often.
I have a strong preference not to go down there. I did have notes on Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Marvin Mims as like guys, like I guess Legette. Maybe they try to Legette him right after that drop last week. That was tough. I don't think he has yardage upside, which is why I don't really feel like going there. Keon Coleman does $5,400. He has yardage upside. He has touchdown upside. So like, I think that's fine. If I have 10 Allen lineups, I'm going to have like at least 2 naked. I probably have like 3 to 5 with Amari, sprinkle some Kincaid in there and have like 1 or 2 with Coleman. Probably 1 with Coleman, I guess, if across 10 Allen lineups. Is that too high for you?
No, like again, you're kind of banking on Coleman, and he did sort of carve out a role, but he honestly might be the 4th option here. And
sure,
I don't know if I want to get there very frequently. So
that makes sense. And then Marvin Mims, he's getting rushing work. I love that. Kind of morphing into a Curtis Samuel kind of role. That's overselling it for sure, but getting some rushing work, getting some downfield work. Snaps are still pretty poor, a 36% snap rate in their game before their bye week, or 35%, I should say. So I agree with you where I prefer not to go below Amari, but if I must, Mims, Coleman, and Legette, well, Palmer, I guess, over Legette, if there's no lad, would be the guys I'd be most receptive to down there.
Yeah, I kind of agree here.
Okay. Loves at receiver. We both agree on Jameson, right?
Jameson is a love.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say Jamar Chase, and if I can't do that, T.
Sure.
The problem is I don't have a lot else that I'm like really like cinched into. So I might bump up Cortland Sutton to be my 3rd love.
Cool.
With the caveat that Amari, depending on
what I was gonna,
Amari or Calvin Ridley would sort of be like the 4th and 5th names.
I think what I will say is my loves are Jameson Williams, Jamar Chase, and then someone from this 6,000, low 6,000, high 5,000 range between Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, Calvin Ridley, and Amari Cooper. And I will let the rest of my lineup dictate where I go there for my 3rd love. But I'm very likely to have one of those guys in my highest dollar single entry lineup this week. Maybe
I think we're kind of on the same page across the board for the most part this week.
Upsetting. Okay, tight ends. Do we just keep going back to Trey McBride at 75?
Oh my God. He's salaried as if he's getting like averaging a touchdown a game almost. Like tight end salaries don't get a lot higher than like they get up to 8,000, 85, but man, he is due for a lot of regression. Let me see where I have him. He should have I have him 5.5 touchdowns. Is what he should have receiving. It's kind of unfortunate for him. And
will he get another fumble recovery touchdown or rushing touchdown before his first receiving touchdown? Yes or no?
No, I think he's gonna. Okay. I think he's gonna score. I think he's gonna have a 2 touchdown game at some point.
I bet him to have a 2 touchdown game last week, and he did not. It was great.
It is not the easiest week to get to 75, correct, but I don't want that to keep me away from Trey McBride, who we've been on. And it's not just we've been there. Like, let's not move off. It's everything's pointing to Trey McBride 100%. Having a huge game.
Yes,
he's got 12 plus targets in 3 straight. He does not ever receive. Like, that's absurd. So for me, I like him a lot. I just don't know if I can really prioritize
But you want some lineups in there where you weasel him in, correct?
Yeah, even without bringbacks, because I'm not playing any Patriots.
Agreed.
I do want to weasel him in there.
I'm not getting to Jonnu. I think the salary just shot up too much for him.
What if Jalen Waddle is more hurt than?
Then I get to more Jonnu. Yeah, I agree.
I think he would be pretty interesting.
He would be pretty interesting. It is a homecoming game for Kelsey, who's from outside of Cleveland. So there's that. But I hate that game, so not going to go there.
Yeah.
No Njoku. So we jump down to where tight end picks back up again, slightly with Andrews, but I think it really picks up with Laporta and Kincaid. Laporta 6,000, Kincaid 57. I think in my main lineup, I'm going to have one of the tight ends in that Bills-Lions game in there. Just, I don't care which one. I'll have one of them, I think.
I think it's very close. They both have a lot of red here in terms of the matchups that you see on FanDuel, but I'm not that concerned because the game environment should just overpower that.
Yeah.
I think the real question is, are you okay saving 1,000 or 700 to a name we'll talk about in a second? Because I don't think anybody else really stands out in between.
I don't either. I think it's a very thin tight end week in a good way. I like that it's thin.
I kind of like Kate Otten still a little bit, but much more realistically, Hunter Henry at a salary of 5,000 is kind of getting me excited. I talked about how no Patriot has like a lot of yardage upside, and that does include Henry sort of from a full season. Just are you able to produce like yardage consistently? And not really, but it's not because like he has games where he has 5 yards. It's like he's consistently sort of in that like 40 to 70 range.
Right.
And that's pretty good.
Yeah.
For a tight end. So Henry at 5K when I need, like, if my concession to get to Jamar Chase is going down to Hunter Henry from like a Laporta. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I think that for like our head-to-head lineup, Henry is very likely to be my tight end. I prefer Kincaid and Laporta for like a tournament, but for a head-to-head lineup, and I'm okay with Henry for tournaments too, to be clear. But like for a head-to-head, I think that he's kind of the guy for me personally.
Yeah, I think you just look, it's a week where we have studs at every position, including tight end with McBride, but really Allen, Saquon, Chase, you got to be okay spending down at tight end, and Henry's that name. So I think it's kind of a 4 tight end slate. Not like specifically wouldn't consider anyone else, but as far as like
4.5 because it's Stone Smart.
Okay, so at this rate, do you think the savings with Stone Smart is enough to use him? Like what's sort of your allocation expectation for him?
15.
Okay, I can live with that. See, I didn't know if you were going to say like.
No, I think there's too much. Like Henry's right there. Kincaid and Laporta have ceilings because of the game. McBride is a ceiling. I think the Smart has a ceiling, but not their ceiling.
Yeah.
So that's why I think to me he'd be like a 15% kind of guy. Like, oh man, I'm really trying to stack Josh Allen with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I gotta spend down somewhere. It probably like he'd be kind of that situation for me.
I agree. So we're on the same page with him.
Cool. Perfect. So tight end loves, I think, are for me Laporta and Kincaid and Henry. Henry for a head-to-head, Laporta and Kincaid for tournaments. But it's still like Henry for tournaments too.
Yeah, if I had to pick 2, it'd be Laporta and Henry.
Okay.
To sort of cover my bases, but Kincaid's interesting again. And just don't want to forget about Trey McBride.
Agreed. Okay, defense. I've not looked at defense yet, so let's see what kind of horrors we've got over here. Oh. The Jags at 33 are facing the Jets, who just got eliminated from the playoffs. That spread is only 3.5, I think. The Jets have still played hard. I know they weren't officially limited to last week, but they looked like they were playing pretty hard. I don't hate the Jags at 33, though. Panthers are favored. Their defense played a lot better recently. They're facing Cooper Rush.
Yep, that was the first one that I was kind of drawn to.
Okay.
Not doing them.
Cleveland might get some sacks with the Chiefs left tackle situation being what it is. I'm not going to use them, but I'm just going to lob that little one out there.
Yeah. Well, we got the bank.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're not as far up as I am.
Oh, okay.
I kind of glossed over a lot of these.
Yeah. I'm fine glossing over most of these. Are you going to say the Bengals at 4,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
I'd say Bengals. Yeah, maybe the Panthers.
I think Bengals, Panthers, Jags, frankly, are the ones that I'm like most
that's not
willing to
bad.
use. Like, I don't want to use the Jags.
Yeah, the Jags are sort of a last resort, but I'd
I
rather
used them
just
last
go.
week and it was fine. That was because
Yeah,
they're
use
facing
them.
Will Levis, but
Yeah. I don't know. I think with Cincinnati at 4 and knowing that I'm not going to get much past that in terms of salary because of who I'm playing, I'm kind of good to key in on those 3.
I think so too. I think I'm cool with that as well. Okay. Any final thoughts for you now that we've discussed the entirety of the Week 15 main slate?
I still feel kind of similar to how I felt, where I still need to like figure out where I'm going next. So my question to you is, undoubtedly, number 1 game for us is Bills Lions.
Yep.
You build your Bills Lions stack.
Yep.
What are you looking to do next?
I don't know. Great question. That's
because it might be like a Houston in Miami mini stack, but that's really kind of one path with Tank and Waddle. Like, because you can't really mini stack like with Nico and Tyreek.
How about this as an answer? I think I kind of want to go towards the offenses we highlighted. Like,
okay,
maybe I grab Brian Robinson for some Commanders exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I grab T or Chase Brown, I guess, if I can, for some Bengals exposure. The Ravens are hard to do in this kind of, which stinks.
That's the thing. It's like, what do you do after that?
But I think I just want to I want to play the hits. I want to target the good offense this week. So I want game stacks of Bills Lions and then just target the good offenses, brother.
And maybe it's not mini stacks. Maybe that's not the answer.
I think we can have mini stacks with, Calvin Ridley or Tajay Spears in Bengals lineups, and we can have mini stacks with the Texans and Dolphins. But
outside of that, there's not a lot of affordable stack options. So I'm kind of with you. And as much as I want to stack and stack and stack, and I don't want to force it, so might be some more one-offs than I'm used to, because that's what I was keeping my eyes peeled for. But
that also might mean I'm higher on Brian Robinson even than I thought. So, at least,
maybe
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that for sure. Okay, that is all that we have here for this week on the Heat Check. As mentioned, if you're trying to get some betting thoughts in there, we can find those on our YouTube page as well. Talking NFL Week 15 best bets. Megan Payton later on today, 4 p.m. Eastern, talking about that. Andy Nader joins me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern to break down our thoughts on the top player props for this week. Those are on the YouTube page. Subscribe there. Leave us a thumbs up and turn on notifications to get notified as we go live Monday through Friday. And of course, all our DFS shows are on the FanDuel Research Podcast feed. Brandon, if people have questions for you on the socials, where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and I'm on Blue Sky at Gdula.
I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your Week 15 NFL DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.